Hey, thanks for coming tonight. Good to see you. Grab yourself a drink, pull up a chair. I've got a story to tell you. Cheers, mate. Tonight in Ton's Kitchen After Hours, Episode 1, Part 3, the eagerly awaited Hanging with the Sharpies. In Part 1, I told you about Rusty's bicycle accident, the one that could have finished him. But the strange thing about Rusty was that accidents seemed to follow him around like a shadow. Looking back now, there are a few moments like that, near misses. Things that could have gone very wrong. Like the time he stepped on a rusty needle. Oh, rusty needle, had his name on it. It snapped off and the head of the needle made its way into a vein, slowly travelling up his leg. Luckily, he complained to Mum about the pain, so she took him to the hospital, which was just up the road. They pulled the needle's tip out before it could do any serious damage. He was a wild lad, afraid of nothing and no one. He used to tear around the bush up the road on his dirt bike with his mate. One day, someone shot him in the back with a slug gun. Luckily for him, it didn't have enough power to punch through his blubber. Oh, jeez. Anyway, another time, he was having a water fight at school. Vic thought it would be smart to grab the high ground, so he climbed on top of the bike sheds. Not such a great idea. He slipped on the wet roof and crashed straight down onto the concrete below, smashing his leg badly. Then, just to prove lightning can strike twice, he broke the same leg again, slipping while getting out of the bath. After that, he never went back to school. As Vic got older and bolder, nobody had the guts to call him Rusty anymore. But when one of his mates joked about his arse cheeks hanging over each side of the trail bike, he called him Saddlebags. Vic must have liked the sound of that, because he wore that new nickname like a badge of honour. Saddlebags. Around that same time, Flapper had taken up heavy drinking, and Plug, who became an apprentice wood machinist at the old man's workplace, he became addicted to sniffing glue that he'd steal from work. I still remember seeing him lying on his bed, his face buried inside a garbage bag full of glue fumes. One day, Vic came to me looking very shaken. He told me he woke up in the middle of the night and he saw the Grim Reaper standing over Plug's bed. About a year later, Vic was laid up sick in bed with a bad case of the flu. A car pulled up outside. One of his mates, Peter Lindemann, knocked on the front door and told Mum they were there to pick Vic up for a night out. Mum said no. He was too sick to go out in the cold night air, so they left. A few hours later, Peter was dead. Killed in a car accident. Vic may well have been sitting in that seat if Mum had said yes. Another bullet. Dodged. Around that time, the older boys started reading books about British gangs. Boot boys, Bother boys, skinheads. Soon they were dressing the part. Walking canes, short-cut jeans, loafer-type shoes, and their skinhead haircuts. Plug was the odd one out though. Skinhead on the top and the sides, but long hair down the back. Before long, other mates copied the style, and the Aussie version of skinheads was born. The Sharpies. Vic would have been around 15 or 16 then, which made me about 10 or 11. Too young to run with the Sharpies, but the urge to belong to a gang was already burning inside of me. So I joined the Cubs, a pint-sized version of the Boy Scouts. By this time, Mum and Dad had pretty much given up trying to discipline the boys. Their Sharpie mates would roll over to our place, drinking, smoking, sometimes bringing girls along with them. And I'll never forget the day a beautiful Aborigine girl named Little Jackie came over to our place. I secretly had the biggest crush on her. She saw me standing there in my Cubs uniform, smiled, and said how cute I looked. Then she wrapped her arms around me and planted the softest kiss on my cheek. A boy my age had never known such a thing. A week later, Jackie moved away to Darwin, and Chubsy felt his first heartbreak. Around that time, Vic also broke his arm, and that plaster caster earned him a promotion, apprentice sharp. The sharps were always looking for trouble. Castlereagh drags, homebush skating ring, community hall dances, anywhere rival gangs gathered. The Hairies, the Surfies, the Mountain Men, they weren't afraid of anyone. Plug would go in first, scouting the place. He'd wear a beanie to hide his haircut, with his long hair giving him just enough disguise to slip under the radar. Once Plug gave the signal, Vic had a job to do. As the apprentice, he had to start the fights. He'd walk up to the biggest bloke he could find and smash him across the face with that plaster cast. And just like that, all hell would break loose. Most Saturday mornings, the Sharpies would gather at our place to plan their weekend chaos. Dozens of tough blokes right there in our living room, and I idolised every one of them. So one day I decided to cut my hair to match theirs. Using a razor blade, I hacked away at it myself, made an absolute mess of it, even carved a bald patch in the front. One of the Sharpies looked at me and he burst out laughing. "Oh, look at him," he said. "Round and spiky, like a bloody pineapple." And just like that, Chubsy became Pineapple. Sometimes they'd let me hang around on Sundays. I'd sit there listening to their stories from the night before. Brawls, booze, drugs, chaos. Things no kid my age should have known about. One night my eldest brother came home covered in knife wounds across his stomach. He claimed he'd been jumped while sitting on a mate's porch, but I reckon that was a Sharpie war wound. One day I heard my three brothers were planning to drive across the desert to Perth. I panicked. So I hid their Sharpie shoes in the dirty laundry basket, hoping to stop them from leaving. That day they showed up at my primary school, talked me into telling them where their shoes were. They made the trip anyway, and I was left alone. I heard that when they reached Perth, their car shit itself, and they were stranded. No money, stuck far away from home. It was a long, lonely time for me while they were gone. When they finally came back, It didn't take long before they headed off again, this time to Melbourne. Back then, Melbourne had a fierce Sharpie culture. Sydney boys arriving on their turf could have gone badly, but instead they were welcomed with respect. Friendships were made. And when my brothers returned home, they didn't come alone. They brought back 2 genuine Melbourne Sharpies with them. One bloke named Steve and a bloke nicknamed Penguin. They called him that because when he stood still, his feet would keep shuffling like a penguin waddling on ice. Mum and Dad took them in like stray dogs. They lived with us for about 6 months. One of those Melbourne Sharps, Steve, he absolutely hated a song. Kung Fu Fighting. Everybody was Kung Fu Fighting. Woo! And of course I owned it on cassette. So whenever he was around, I'd play it real loud. After about the 10th time, he glared at me and said, "Play it again and I'll shove that cassette right up your arsehole." But I knew he wouldn't. After all, I was part of the royal Sharpie bloodline. So naturally, I kept playing it whenever I got the chance. One night we were sitting in their dim, smoke-filled room. That same bloke, Steve, was showing off, lighting his farts. I thought it was pretty cool at the time, actually. So I asked if I could light one for him. He thought that was hilarious, handed me the lighter, lifted up his legs, and as he started to fart, I flicked the lighter right in front of his face. The whole room lit up like a freight train headlight. He jumped in shock, smashed his head against the wardrobe above the bed, and knocked himself out cold. The next morning, I saw him wobbling down the hallway with an egg-sized lump on his head. And after that, I kept my distance from him for the rest of his stay. All right, that's it for tonight in Tom's Kitchen, After Hours. Thanks for dropping by and keeping me company. If you want to hear more stories from my weird old past, make sure you follow the podcast and come back for the next episode. I'll leave the light on for you. Until then, take care and good night.